Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Northborough. If you haven't seen the show before, my name is Art Bergeron. I'm an elder law attorney. I work at Myrick O'Connell. There are a whole bunch of us. There are like 70 of us, so everybody gets to specialize. I do nothing but elder law. I don't even think I have a client now who is under 55 years old. So these shows I started several years ago, and I thought they were going to be about law, but they never really were. They were really about Frank and Mary. If you've seen any of my seminar presentations, Frank and Mary and their kids, Peter, Paul, and Mary Jr., Frank and Mary live in Northborough, and they want to live in their house until they die. They want to be buried in the backyard. So their question, and the question for this show is, if that's your goal, and if you want to live not just in any old house, but in a house in Northborough, who are the people you need to know about? What are the programs you need to know about in order to stay at home? The guest that I have today is really terrific. And by the way, my friend Kelly Burke couldn't make it today, my co-host. The guest today who I have is really terrific. Her name is Kelly Hoag. Kelly, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And you are with Seniors Helping Seniors,
That's right.
Which is the home care agency that kind of has always most interested me of all of the many home care agencies, which are really agencies that provide folks to help people at home. That's why they're called, right, home care agencies. So I'd like you to, if you could, just start off by talking a little bit about you and how you ended up being at Seniors Helping Seniors.
Sure. And
then we can talk about Seniors Helping Seniors. So you're obviously not a senior,
no,
right?
I'm not, and I get that question a lot.
A lot, yeah, wow, you look so young, right? So are you from Northborough? Are you from Massachusetts? Are you from this area?
I grew up in Newton, actually, and I'm currently living in Watertown.
Oh,
but,
so you live close. Okay.
I do live close, and I'm in this area frequently because we have a lot of clients out here.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I grew up in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and you've been working now, did you go to school in geriatrics and stuff, or you just kind of find your way into this because you were just interested?
I just found my way into this. I've always been interested in working with seniors. So I actually went to school for human services and counseling. And I've worked with people of all ages, but I've always really gravitated towards working with older adults.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So, and as a human services person, I mean, that's who does human services,
That's
right?
right.
That's why you go to school in those areas.
Correct.
So you've been at Seniors Helping Seniors now for how long?
Just over 3 years.
Which is a while.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the model. What's
Sure.
the point of Seniors Helping Seniors?
So our model is that we employ seniors exclusively, which we use the term a little bit loosely. It's people who are over 50.
Yeah.
But the average caregiver, we refer to them as caregivers and companions, just depending on the need. But the average age is about 67. So we have a lot of people in their 60s and 70s.
The average age of the caregiver,
the
of your
age
folks,
of our employees,
is
yes,
67.
Our caregivers is 67. So people who are retired or semi-retired, I would say a large majority of our staff are retired, fully retired.
I see. And can you talk about, for those folks before they were retired, like who were they? What did they do?
Well, that's kind of the neat thing about the model is we're not really looking for people who necessarily have experience in human service or healthcare. So the people really run the gamut from the business realm, real estate, law. We have some attorneys like you.
Yeah.
We have people who
are just looking for a little less stress in their life.
Right.
You know?
Right. And people who have been homemakers, people who have worked as nurses, or I don't know if we have any physicians at the moment, high tech.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is to have people with a diverse range of experiences so that we can make really good matches. So I guess I'm sort of the matchmaker.
Oh.
Per se.
So your goal is, so first of all, when folks come in and they may be interested in doing this, and by the way, these aren't volunteers, right?
No,
these
they are paid employees.
These are paid employees, right? And they're getting what? Are they getting a W-2 from Seniors Helping Seniors? And then Seniors Helping Seniors in turn is billing the folks for whom you're providing the care.
Correct. So that functions pretty similarly to other home care agencies.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm just going to mention up front, because I know I had talked to an associate of yours named Doug Peck, who actually for a number of years owned the Seniors Helping Seniors franchise that was kind of in this area.
Correct.
And he's now working with you folks,
He
right?
is.
And you
Yeah.
kind of expanded.
Yeah.
And he would say, one of the reasons for these shows is we're recruiting here because we really want more seniors who are going to be doing this, right? So do you have an interest in folks who may be living in Northborough who want to be doing this kind of work and want to be in this area?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a large need in this area for people who are interested in doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
And
so tell me how the employment, kind of what the setup is. So if I wanted to do this work, is this like a fixed number of hours? Is this a fixed number of days? You just kind of talk about that.
Of course, yes. So we're very flexible. Yeah. We understand that people are retired. A lot of people like to travel, spend time with their family if they had a busy job. And so we're pretty flexible. We just ask that people have at least 4 to 6 hours a week available to us, if possible. Yeah. And it could be, we have some people that just want to work on Tuesdays, or some people who just want to work, a couple mornings a week. And oftentimes people are just looking to sort of dip their toe in the water to see what it's like.
Sure, sure.
Because it can be a little daunting if you've never worked in home visiting or human services. And so, we try to be as flexible as possible for people, so we do get a sense of how many hours are you looking for. So some people are looking for volunteer opportunities, and this becomes something that is like a nice happy medium where they can get some supplemental income.
It's like but you're volunteering, but you still get, but there's actually a check,
Right.
So I know a lot of seniors. So my wife has been a paraprofessional. She's been a teacher's aide for years.
Yeah.
She says she knows a lot of teachers. They retire, and then they basically teach for their vacations, right? They're saving the vacation money, right? And they're still doing a little bit of teaching.
That's
so
right.
you can kind of figure that out.
That's right.
So if the person gets hired, now if they're working, do the folks who are working for you tend to be working for the same senior or with the same senior kind of all the time? Or are they kind of doing a variety? What are they doing?
It varies significantly, actually.
Yeah.
For the most part, the largest majority it's one person with one person.
Yeah.
But depending, some people really, they're very ambivalent about starting, and they'll say, I'm available for 4 hours, and then they get so attached to their client, or they realize, I'm really good at this, and they want to work more hours. So it just depends on the amount of hours that people want. But some people have 3 clients, 4 clients, some people just have 1. And then on the other side of that, some of our clients, we refer to them as clients who are receiving the help or the companionship. Some really also just want to dip their toe in the water, so they might only want 2 hours a week.
Right.
So, or they might want 40 hours a week, in which they would have multiple caregivers.
Because I was going to say, looking from my client side, from the perspective of the people who may be wanting some care in the home for any number of reasons. On the one hand, they don't really want care at home.
No.
They really just want to be living in their house,
That's right.
But now they've got some kinds of needs,
That's
right? And so they really need somebody. They're desperately hoping they don't. Right. They don't want a stranger in their house,
That's right.
and they don't want, there's a whole bunch of reasons why they don't want them in their house. So can you talk about what are the typical kinds of things that folks do, that your employees do when they're providing the care? What does it mean to provide care?
Sure.
Right.
Well, just to back up a little bit, when people come to us, it's usually a family member or social worker involved, and so what we try to do is learn as much about the client as possible. So what did they do for a living? What kinds of hobbies do they have now, or did they have at one point that they might not be engaging in? Right. From there, we have profiles on all of our caregivers as well. We spend a lot of time with them in the beginning, especially in the beginning, and throughout the month we have different events. But so we try to.
I suppose you really, because you want their background, and you also want to get a kind of a sense of their personality, because you're really like matchmaking.
Exactly, and it's a social model. So it's we're really focused on the social emotional piece of supporting people to keep them as social as possible on both ends, really.
I was going to say a social model as opposed to what? What does that mean?
As opposed to a healthcare model, which it is healthcare, because social engagement and psychological well-being is healthcare, but we are sort of considered helping people on a more to stay as socially engaged as possible, even if they can't leave their home.
I see. So you're not kind of having like quasi nurses. You're not having people administering meds, you're not having people, you know, helping, or do you have people like even helping people dress or helping people with the activities of daily living?
We do a little bit of that.
But just a little.
But just a little. We do have a few certified nursing assistants on staff. They are seniors. But no, we're not lifting people out of their beds and washing them. That's not really our model. There's a lot of home care agencies out there that do that level of care. We're really focused on keeping people engaged socially and trying to integrate the things they like to do into their life, because oftentimes they're not doing those things anymore.
I see.
So the types of things that we do, usually, most commonly, the first time people call us is because their parent or loved one is no longer driving, or they're in the process of taking the keys away, which is always a very hard process.
So they're not driving either voluntarily or involuntarily, but they're not driving.
They're not driving.
And if they're living in Northborough, in most neighborhoods, that means they're not getting many places because stuff is kind of spread out.
That's right. Things are spread out, especially in the Metro West area. We also service the greater Boston area. But yeah, and if they have memory impairment, you know, that people don't want their family members out walking by themselves or, you know, taking a tea somewhere. So so transportation is big for us, getting people out of the house if that's possible. It's not possible for all of our clients to leave the house, but for the clients that are able to leave, oftentimes the toe in the water is the transportation piece. You know, it's the one thing that people who aren't driving can kind of say, all right, this isn't something I'm able to do anymore. So we're often sort of starting we want to take you out to run errands or take you to a doctor's appointment, maybe go to a museum if you like art, or try to find things they like to do outside of the home if possible. So, so transportation is big.
But, and you could see that would just kind of lead to other things, because maybe it's transportation to a visit. Or maybe, as you suggested, like as with a museum or with a park or whatever, maybe transportation to someplace they just like being.
That's right.
But you just can't be there anymore without a car, right? And maybe you don't want to be there alone because it might be confusing.
That's right.
I see.
Yeah, and a lot of times people want to, you know, if they're not driving or they haven't been driving for a while, their world gets a whole lot smaller. Sometimes people just like to take a drive, not even with a destination in mind, especially during the fall or during the winter time when there's lights everywhere. So we do a lot. We've done so many fall foliage rides, and so, you know, it's a nice way to feel like you're getting out, even if you're not really able to get out on your own. You just always kind of take for granted the freedom you have when you can drive.
And you can do that in this case without necessarily having to call your daughter.
That's right.
Or having to call your son, who may be glad to do it, except that they're working, or there's a school event, or there's a something or other.
And a lot of people, you know, they don't really want to burden their children with having to be the sole people that do things for them. And so this is trying to give the client a sense of independence as well. I don't have to lean on my children for everything. And the idea is that if we've made a good match, which we've gotten pretty good at this point, if we've made a good match, then it feels like a friendship. So it feels like you're taking a ride or going to a museum with a friend, somebody who's engaging. And we really are screening for people who are socially engaging in a number of different ways.
I suppose in many ways, if you've been seeing the same person, you really are going to the museum with a friend.
You are,
Right, because it's somebody that you really feel comfortable with.
That's right.
And therefore somebody that you can just feel like, you know, you're just going to relax and you're just going to kind of talk and kind of gossip and stuff.
Right, and if we did our job well, we've made a match of people who have similar interests, or we really have a good idea of what the client likes to do. So those are nice little icebreakers. When we get a biography from the family, then there are some little things in there. You know, what do they like to talk about? What's their favorite thing to talk about? Do they love talking about their grandkids? Do they love talking about art? So, you know, if we can get as much information about the person's very person-centered care.
And I guess that was one of the things that I just liked about the whole model when I first met Doug, was this notion that, among other things, if you're at home and you've got somebody coming in, you're actually having a conversation with somebody who has some of your memories, right? And actually knows some of those music groups that you refer to, and might even want to listen to them, you know, and it isn't like a total disconnect. So I'm going to tell you, so this is a personal story. So our daughter, one of our daughters was home this weekend, because actually we were taking out to lunch a very good friend of the family who was turning 98. She was turning 98, right? So and it was great, and we all got together, right? So now I'm driving my daughter back to the airport together with a good friend of hers who, and my daughter, she's like 30, early 30s, and so is the friend. And and she was like, "Oh, Mr. Bergeron, you know, would you like to listen to some music on?" Yeah, and I was suggesting this wonderful, there's a jazz artist, and I said, "Well, what's really interesting about this guy, he really has this, it's a lot of jazz stuff, but has this great version of my Wild Irish Rose." And the friend said, "I don't think I've ever heard of that." I said, "You haven't heard of my Wild," and you know, and my daughter said, "Actually, I haven't heard of that song either, Dad." And I was saying to myself, I am so not where they are in terms of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, to think, so they don't know that, and I only learned that from my parents,
That's
right? So to think of our 98-year-old friend,
That's
right, who was in her home until she was 95 and then voluntarily gave up the car.
Which is unusual.
Which is unusual, but I remember talking to her and saying, you know, because she was getting some neuropathy, and I said, you know, it's not for you, right? You're going to be driving, and there's going to be a little kid crossing the street, and you're going to hit him because you've got the neuropathy, and you couldn't hit the brake, and you're never going to forgive yourself. Never going to forgive it. So she finally gave up the car, but for her, that was the issue, to be totally isolated.
Yeah.
So anyway, I drift. So I want to go back now to something that we were talking a little bit about beforehand, which is, as you mentioned, you've got some number of people who've got some memory issues, right?
A large percentage.
A large percentage. Yeah. And by the way, I've got some memory issues myself, I think, so I can appreciate that. So can you talk about how really a couple of things. First, so are there some special things, right, that you train your people to deal with, and that also would be of interest to folks who are watching right now who maybe they've got some memory issues, or maybe they're helping someone. It's a spouse or whatever, a dad or whatever that's got memory issues. Can you talk about what some of the common problems are that come up there, what the wrong way is to deal with them, and kind of what the right way may be to deal with them? Because I think that's one of the goals of this show, is to have people feeling like if you've got some memory problems, right, it's okay. It's just something that happens, and not only that, it's not like you've got the plague. You know,
right.
You can still be in the community active, except if you got some memory problems. So you just talk about that in general.
Yeah, of course. So a large percentage of our clients have memory impairment, which makes a lot of sense. It sort of became this unintentional niche of ours because a lot of the people who we work with memory impairment, that physically they're in good shape. Yeah. So they don't need the more medical type of care. But the memory issues, they range, from people who have Alzheimer's. Maybe it's just someone who's, almost 100 and has some natural age memory related issues. But there are some best practices, and I think that's one of the common challenges we have with our new caregivers is oftentimes we'll have people that have said, oh, I've never worked with someone who has, or I've never known anyone who has Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. And I think people have this idea that working with someone with memory impairment, you're going to have someone who's aggressive, who's combative. And I've never experienced that. And I've worked with so many people who have memory impairment. So I think it's...
And by the way, for everybody who is watching, who knows somebody who has some of these issues, so once again, I'll just tell you a story. So I was talking to actually a good friend of mine who was a senior center director in another town, who, by the way, her mother had Alzheimer's, and so it was at home by herself. So this lady was visiting her mother regularly, and she said one of the things that bothered her so much was that she was a social woman, the mother, and had a set of friends, none of whom would come over. Right. And she'd call these people, the daughter would, and say, well, my mother would love to see you. And they'd literally say, she's not the same person. Right. Or, I don't know what to say to her, I don't want to bother her, right? So what you're teaching your best practices to, and what hopefully the caregiver is learning, also the neighbors can be feeling like, it's still the same friend that I had.
That's right.
Except that I just need to talk to her or him in a different way.
Yeah, I think the education piece is really important, because I've worked with a lot of spouses of people of memory impairment where they've lost a lot of friends because, like you said, it's not the plague, but some people react to it as though it is. So
they don't know what to say.
They don't know what to say. They're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing. They're afraid it's not their friend anymore. I don't think we're at the point anymore where people think they're going to catch it, but I think it's just it's sad and it's hard, and it can be, but one of the things that we try to teach people is they are still the person who they were. They might not remember what they had for breakfast. They may not remember their children's names or how many children they have. They
might not remember your name.
They usually don't remember my name.
Right?
Yes, they may not. They often don't remember the friend, which is a great point, because we'll often tell our caregivers the first thing you do when you see your client is just say, "Hey, it's me, Joe," because that takes the pressure off of them feeling bad about not remembering your name. So just say your name immediately. It's Joe, it's me. But part of it is just stepping into their reality and not correcting people when they don't remember something or they remember it not correctly. And that's...
can you give us an example?
I can. I have a lot of examples, but I'm going to give you one that's a little more personal, because this is sort of what inspired me to get into this work. My grandmother, so I grew up in a multi-generational home where our grandparents lived upstairs, and we had a great-grandmother who lived down the street in a skilled nursing facility. She lived to be about 103. And I remember this was the first experience I had with somebody who had Alzheimer's. So my grandmother worked at the skilled nursing well into her 70s, which really gave her so much purpose. And I remember...
Which was down the street?
Which was right down the street. Yeah, it was really nice. And this was before there was assisted living and memory care, so everybody was,
either you were at home or you were in the nursing home. Those were the only, in the 90s, when my mother went to the nursing home, that was the only option.
Exactly, and so it was a blend of people with different physical issues, cognitive issues, and this was the first time I had heard of Alzheimer's. There was this gentleman who had Alzheimer's, and he was a psychiatrist. He was this renowned psychiatrist. And he had a center named after him, and he was at the moderate to advanced stages of Alzheimer's, and he went up to her, and she was sitting at the desk, and she was starting to feel, as a lot of women who are aging do, very self-conscious about, her wrinkles and her lines, and the doctor went up to her and said, "You know what I'm gonna do for you? I'm gonna remove those bags from under your eyes." And I just gasped, and I thought, "Oh," and my grandmother said, "That would be great. When can I get an appointment?" "As soon as possible, I'd like to." And he, just sort of lit up, and the conversation went on, and then he walked away and did something else. And I just remember thinking, wow, she didn't argue with him, she didn't correct him, she was enthusiastic, she was compassionate, she was kind. And then he left, and she just started laughing, and it actually, she went home, and she told the family about it. And so I think that there are these opportunities.
Because that's where he was.
That's where he was at. And so it's just about meeting people where they're at, sort of playing along, if you will. So every year we speak at the Alzheimer's Association conference, and last year we did something, the topic was using improvisational strategies and working with people who have dementia. So I don't know if you're familiar with improv, but it's sort of just kind of thinking on your feet. It's a form of acting, and it's very much complementary to working with people who have dementia, because you really do just need to think on your feet and be prepared to converse about a number of different things. So if the person looks outside and sees, a purple sky, then the sky's purple. It's just being agreeable and stepping into their world.
If she sees a purple sky, then the sky is purple.
That's right. So, so it's just around helping people to understand that they don't have to have the right answer. They just have to be respectful and agree. And that they will actually find these really amazing glimpses of the person, especially if the person becomes comfortable with them, which often is the case.
Yes. I remember there was a guy named John Zeisel who had done a lot of this kind of work, and actually had developed the Hearthstone memory care unit.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
And who really talks about the fact that folks who have memory loss, if you appreciate them, can be a grace. They are a grace to those around them, because because you can't be with them and be just in your own world, in your own worrying about the future and stressed out about you have to be there. You have to just be there.
That's right.
The other thing that is just striking about this conversation is, inevitably, people whom I have met who are this interested in this issue have somebody like your grandmother.
Yeah.
There are people who came from that and saw it and lived it, and to some extent in the back of their mind said, boy, that's really important.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to do this kind of work is just really important.
Yeah.
So this has been a real pleasure, and it's been just a pleasure for me. You know, every once in a while, you just meet a person who who can just really help a lot of folks. I can see that that's kind of where you are.
Oh, thank you.
So for this presentation, I'm going to ask that the folks here at the cable kind of do a banner or something,
Sure.
so that with your contact information and the name of, you know, Seniors Helping Seniors, and talking about, you know, so if they know how to reach you.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about the fact that you folks have also become the owners of Pleasantries, which is this terrific adult day program that is in Marlborough, and
Yes.
I've interviewed the previous owner, Tammy Pozaricki, who was
Yes,
actually is a
Tammy's great.
Northborough resident, right? And was terrific,
Yeah.
and from what she tells me, it's equally terrific. So we're not going to talk about that, but so get us the information for Seniors
Sure.
Helping Seniors,
Will do.
right? I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope in a number of ways. I hope that it was helpful because if you're a senior and want to not volunteer, but actually get paid to do some of this really useful stuff, now you know how to do it. If you're a senior and you've got some memory issues, or you've got a relative with a memory issue, and you think that it could be really helpful to have somebody at home, well, these are folks that you may want to call. These are really folks you may want to call. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Northborough. Thank you.